The morning sun cast long shadows across the palace courtyard as Lady stood by the tall windows of her private chambers. Her hands trembled slightly as she held the letter that would change everything. The royal seal at the bottom seemed to mock her with its golden shine. Prince William had been called away on a diplomatic mission that would take him to the furthest corners of the Commonwealth, and this time there was no telling when he would return. Had always known this day might come. Being married to the heir to the throne meant accepting that duty would sometimes pull them apart. But knowing something in your mind and feeling it in your heart were two entirely different things. She had watched William struggle with the decision for weeks, seeing the conflict in his eyes every time he looked at their children playing in the garden. The palace staff moved quietly through the halls, their usual cheerful chatter replaced by respectful whispers. Everyone seemed to sense the weight of the moment. Mrs. Henderson's long-time lady-in-waiting knocked softly before entering the room. Her kind eyes immediately noticed the tears that was trying so hard to hold back. "Your Royal Highness," she said gently, "the car will be ready in an hour. Shall I help you prepare?" Nodded, not trusting her voice to remain steady. The simple act of choosing what to wear for such a goodbye seemed impossible. How do you dress for the day your heart breaks a little? Down the hall, William sat in his study, staring at the same letter. His advisors had made it clear that this mission was crucial for the future of the monarchy and the country. Several Commonwealth nations were facing political instability, and his presence could help strengthen diplomatic ties that had taken generations to build. He understood the importance, but it didn't make leaving any easier. The children didn't fully understand what was happening. 8-year-old Prince George kept asking why Daddy had to go so far away, while 6-year-old Princess Charlotte clung to William's leg whenever he tried to move. Little Prince Louis, only 4, seemed to sense the sadness in the air but couldn't quite grasp why everyone looked so worried. William's private secretary, James, entered quietly with the final itinerary. "Sir, the press has been informed that this will be a private farewell. They'll respect the family's privacy during the departure." William appreciated the gesture, but he knew that cameras would still be there, hidden in the distance, ready to capture every emotion. As the hour approached, found herself standing in front of the mirror, barely recognizing the woman staring back at her. She had always been strong, the steady presence beside William through countless public appearances and royal duties. But today, she felt fragile, like a piece of delicate china that might shatter at the slightest touch. The sound of small footsteps in the hallway reminded her that she needed to be brave for the children. They would be watching her every move, learning how to handle difficult goodbyes by seeing how their mother managed this one. She took a deep breath, wiped away the tears that had escaped despite her best efforts, and opened the door to face whatever came next. William was waiting in the corridor, already dressed in his traveling clothes. Their eyes met, and in that moment no words were needed. 20 years of marriage had created a language between them that went beyond speech. He stepped forward and took her hands in his, feeling how cold they were despite the warm morning air. "We'll get through this," he whispered, though his own voice betrayed the uncertainty he felt. Squeezed his hands, drawing strength from his touch. Around them, the palace continued its quiet preparations, but for just a moment, it felt like they were the only two people in the world. The children appeared at the end of the hallway, walking slowly with their nanny. Each step brought them closer to a goodbye that none of them wanted to say. William knelt down as they approached, opening his arms wide to gather all 3 of them in one last family hug before the day truly began. The family breakfast that morning felt like a sacred ritual, each moment stretched thin with the weight of impending separation. Had asked the kitchen staff to prepare all of William's favorite foods, as if somehow the taste of home could travel with him across the oceans. The children picked at their food, more interested in stealing glances at their father than eating. William tried to keep the conversation light, telling jokes and stories that would normally have the children giggling uncontrollably. But today, even their laughter seemed forced, as if they were all actors in a play none of them wanted to perform. Watched him carefully, memorizing the way his eyes crinkled when he smiled, the gentle way he cut Charlotte's toast into perfect triangles. "Will you send us letters, Papa?" George asked suddenly, his young voice breaking the careful pretense they had all been maintaining. William's fork paused halfway to his mouth and saw him swallow hard before answering. "Every single day," he promised, reaching across the table to ruffle his son's hair. "And I'll send pictures too, so you can see all the places I visit. Maybe when I come back, we can plan a family trip to some of the most beautiful spots I discover." Charlotte, ever practical despite her young age, asked the question that was haunting them all. "But Papa, when will you come back?" The silence that followed was deafening. William and exchanged glances, both knowing that there was no good answer to give. "As soon as I possibly can, sweetheart," William said finally. "The work I'm doing is very important for our country, but nothing is more important to me than coming home to all of you." It was the truth, but it felt inadequate in the face of Charlotte's trusting blue eyes. After breakfast, the family retreated to the private garden where they had spent countless happy hours together. William pushed Louis on the swing while, and the older children sat on the grass nearby, everyone trying to pretend this was just another ordinary morning. But the packed luggage sitting by the garden gate served as a constant reminder that their time was running out. The palace photographer, David, appeared discreetly at the edge of the garden. He had been with the family for years, documenting their most precious moments, and today would be no exception. But instead of his usual cheerful demeanor, David worked quietly, almost invisible as he captured what everyone knew would be historically significant photographs. Found herself studying William's face, trying to burn every detail into her memory. The way he threw his head back when he laughed at Louis's silly joke. The gentle patience he showed when George wanted to tell him an elaborate story about a dream he'd had. The protective way he wrapped his arm around Charlotte when she started to look sad again. As the morning wore on, various members of the royal household came to pay their respects and bid William farewell. Each goodbye was a small ceremony in itself, with staff members who had served the family for decades struggling to maintain their professional composure. Mrs. Henderson dabbed at her eyes with a handkerchief, while the head gardener, old Thomas, simply shook William's hand and said, "Godspeed, sir, Godspeed." The children began to sense that something final was approaching. Louis, too young to understand diplomacy or duty, started to cling more tightly to his father. Charlotte grew quieter with each passing minute, while George, trying to be brave like the future king he would one day become, stood but couldn't hide the tears gathering in his eyes. William's bodyguard, Detective Inspector Sarah, approached respectfully. "Sir, the car is ready whenever you are." The simple statement hit the family like a physical blow. The theoretical goodbye they had been dreading was about to become reality. Stood up slowly, her legs feeling unsteady beneath her. She had presided over countless royal ceremonies, had faced the public during times of crisis and celebration, but nothing had prepared her for this moment. William rose too, and for a heartbeat, they all just stood there in the garden, nobody wanting to be the first to move toward the inevitable. The children seemed to understand instinctively that their time for goodbyes had come. They surrounded William like small planets orbiting the sun, each trying to hold on to him a little longer. Watched from a few feet away, giving them space for their private farewells while her own heart quietly shattered. Princess Charlotte was the first to speak, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't want you to go, Papa." The simple honesty of her words broke through all the careful composure the adults had been maintaining. William knelt down and pulled her close, his own tears finally beginning to fall. "I don't want to go either, my darling," he admitted, his voice thick with emotion. "But sometimes grown-ups have to do things they don't want to do to help other people. Can you be brave for me? Can you help Mama take care of Louis and George while I'm away?" Charlotte nodded solemnly, accepting the responsibility with the seriousness that only a 6-year-old could muster. "I promise, Papa, I'll be the best helper." William kissed the top of her head, breathing in the sweet scent of her shampoo, trying to memorize this moment forever. The walk from the garden to the courtyard felt like a funeral procession, each step echoing with finality. William carried Louis on his shoulders, the little boy's arms wrapped tightly around his father's neck, while George and Charlotte walked solemnly beside them. Followed slightly behind, watching the scene unfold as if from outside her own body. The black car waited in the courtyard like a patient beast, its engine running quietly. William's security detail stood respectfully at a distance, their faces carefully neutral despite the emotional scene unfolding before them. They had protected this family for years, had become more than just employees, and saying goodbye to William felt personal for them too. Detective Inspector approached discreetly. "Ma'am, we'll take excellent care of him. I give you my word." Nodded, grateful for the reassurance, but knowing that no amount of security could protect William from the heartbreak of separation or the loneliness of being so far from home. As they reached the car, William finally set Louis down, and the reality of the moment crashed over all of them like a wave. This was it. No more delays, no more precious stolen moments. The diplomatic mission that would take him away for months was about to begin, and every second of delay now felt like a small betrayal of his duty. William knelt down once more, gathering all three children in his arms. "I need you to promise me something," he said, his voice steady despite the tears streaming down his face. "I need you to be kind to each other, to help your mama, and to remember every single day how much I love you. Can you do that for me?" Three small voices chorused, "Yes, Papa," in unison, and had to press her hand to her mouth to keep from sobbing out loud. The children's innocent trust in their father's love, even as he prepared to leave them, was almost too beautiful and heartbreaking to witness. George, trying so hard to be mature, stepped forward first. "Papa, I'll take care of everyone while you're gone. I promise." William's pride in his eldest son was visible on his face as he pulled the boy close. "I know you will, George. You're going to be an amazing king someday, just like your great-grandfather would have been proud to see." The weight of royal responsibility seemed to settle on George's young shoulders, and he stood a little taller as he stepped back. Charlotte came next, presenting William with a small drawing she had made that morning. It showed their family standing together in the garden with a bright yellow sun shining overhead, and "I love Papa" written in colorful crayon letters across the top. William's hands shook as he took the precious gift. "This is the most beautiful picture I've ever seen," he told her, his voice breaking slightly. "I'm going to carry it with me everywhere I go, so I'll always have you close to my heart." He folded the paper carefully and tucked it into his jacket pocket, right over his heart. Little Louis, who had been unusually quiet, suddenly burst into tears. "Don't go, Papa. Stay home with us." He threw himself at William's legs, clinging desperately. The raw emotion in the 4-year-old's voice broke something in all of them, and suddenly no one was trying to hide their tears anymore. William scooped Louis up one last time, holding him close and whispering softly in his ear. "I have to go, little man, but I'll come back. I promise I'll come back. And while I'm gone, you're the man of the house, okay? You have to help Mama and be very, very good." Louis nodded against his father's shoulder, his small body shaking with sobs. William held him for a long moment, swaying slightly as if he were trying to rock away both their heartbreak. When he finally set the boy down, his own composure was hanging by the thinnest of threads. Now came the moment he'd been dreading most. Their private goodbye would have to happen in front of an audience of staff, security personnel, and the ever-present cameras hidden in the distance. But as William turned to face her, everything else seemed to fade away. They had said their real goodbyes in private the night before, lying in bed and holding each other until the early hours of the morning, whispering promises and memories and all the things that couldn't be said in public. But standing there in the courtyard, with their children watching and the weight of royal duty pressing down on them, they needed to find a way to say goodbye all over again. William reached for his hands, and she stepped into his arms without hesitation. For 20 years, she had been his anchor, his closest advisor, his best friend, and the love of his life. The thought of facing the coming months without her steady presence beside him felt almost impossible. "Take care of yourself," whispered against his ear, her voice barely audible. "Don't forget to eat properly, get enough sleep, and remember that we're all so proud of you." Her practical concerns made him smile despite his tears. "Take care of our Bobbies," he whispered back. "And take care of yourself, too. I need you to be here when I come home." They held each other tightly, both trying to memorize the feeling of being complete, of being a family unit that nothing could break. The car door opened with a soft click, and William's private secretary stepped forward gently. "Sir, I'm very sorry, but we really must leave now." The flight schedule was rigid, and delays could cause diplomatic complications that might affect the entire mission. William nodded, understanding the necessity but hating it all the same. He kissed one last time, a soft, lingering kiss that tasted of tears and promises. Then he turned to wave one final time at the children, who had lined up beside their mother like brave little soldiers. "I love you all more than words can say," he called out, his voice carrying across the courtyard. "I'll see you soon." It was both a promise and a prayer, spoken with all the conviction he could muster. The car door closed with a finality that echoed through the courtyard like the tolling of a bell. William pressed his palm against the window, his wedding ring catching the morning light as the vehicle began to move slowly away from everything he held dear. And the children stood frozen in place, watching as the distance between them grew with each passing second. Inside the car, William closed his eyes and tried to compose himself for the public appearances that lay ahead. But Charlotte's drawing crinkled softly in his jacket pocket with each breath, and Louis's tearful, "Don't go, Papa," still rang in his ears. The diplomatic briefing papers on the seat beside him seemed suddenly insignificant compared to the family he was leaving behind. His private secretary, James, sat quietly in the front seat, giving William the space he needed to process the goodbye. James had been with the royal family for 15 years and had witnessed many departures, but none quite as emotionally charged as this one. The usual professional distance felt inappropriate in the face of such raw human emotion. Meanwhile, back in the courtyard, stood with her arms around her children, all of them watching until the car disappeared completely from view. The silence that followed was deafening. Mrs. Henderson approached carefully, her own eyes red with tears. "Your Royal Highness," she said softly, "shall we go inside? Perhaps the children would like some hot chocolate." It was a gentle attempt to restore some normalcy to a morning that had been anything but normal. Charlotte was the first to speak, her small voice cutting through the quiet. "Is Papa really gone?" The question hung in the air like a challenge to everything they had just witnessed. Knelt down to her daughter's level, struggling to find words that would comfort without lying. "Yes, sweetheart, Papa has started his important work trip, but he's not gone from our hearts, is he? He'll always be right here," said, placing her hand over Charlotte's chest. "And he'll come back to us. He promised, and Papa always keeps his promises." George, who had been trying so hard to be brave, suddenly crumpled. "I don't want to be the man of the house," he sobbed. "I want Papa to come back right now." His 8-year-old shoulders shook with the weight of responsibility he felt but wasn't ready to carry. Gathered him close, her heart breaking for her son's struggle between boyhood and the royal destiny that awaited him. "Oh, my darling, you don't have to be anything but yourself. We're all going to take care of each other together. No one expects you to be grown up yet." Louis, who had been unusually quiet since the car disappeared, suddenly ran toward the gate where the vehicle had exited. "Papa, come back! I forgot to give you my teddy bear." His desperate cry echoed off the palace walls and had to catch him before he could run into the street. The photographers who had been discreetly positioned around the palace grounds captured these moments of raw grief and love, understanding instinctively that they were witnessing something historically significant. The images would later be seen around the world, but in that moment, their importance paled beside the simple human drama of a family learning to cope with separation. As they slowly made their way back inside the palace, each room seemed to echo with William's absence. His coffee cup still sat on the breakfast table, his newspaper folded exactly the way he always left it. The children's toys were scattered across the floor of the family room where he had been playing with them just hours earlier. Found herself moving through the palace like a sleepwalker, going through the motions of normal life while feeling completely disconnected from everything around her. The staff moved quietly and efficiently, understanding without being told that this was a day for hushed voices and gentle handling. The first phone call came within an hour. William's voice, transmitted across thousands of miles through crackling phone lines, sounded small and far away. "We've reached the airport," he said simply. "I just wanted you to know I'm thinking of you all." Clutched the phone like a lifeline, desperate to keep him talking, to maintain the connection for as long as possible. "The children are asking when you'll call again," she said, though what she really meant was that she was asking, that she needed to know when she would hear his voice again. "Every day," William promised, just as he had promised the children. "Same time every evening, your time. It's a date, and I never miss dates with my favorite people." His attempt at lightness didn't quite mask the exhaustion and sadness in his voice. The children took turns saying goodbye again over the phone, each conversation brief but precious. Charlotte told him about a butterfly she had seen in the garden. George shared a joke he had remembered, and Louis simply breathed into the phone as if he could somehow send his love through the connection. After the call ended, the palace seemed to settle into a different rhythm. The usual bustle of activity continued, but with a subdued quality, as if everyone was walking on tiptoes around the family's grief. Meals were served, duties were performed, but everything felt muted, like a song played in a minor key. That evening found herself standing in the same spot by the window where she had received the letter that morning. It felt like a lifetime had passed since then, though it had been only 12 hours. The courtyard below was empty now, no trace remaining of the morning's emotional farewell, except for the memories that would stay with them all forever. The children had finally been tucked into bed, each one requesting an extra story, an extra song, an extra moment of comfort before facing their first night without Papa's goodnight kisses. Sat in the quiet of the evening, surrounded by the familiar luxury of the palace, but feeling more alone than she had ever felt in her life. A soft knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. Mrs. Henderson entered with a tea tray, her kind face showing the strain of the day. "I thought you might like some chamomile tea, Your Royal Highness. It might help you sleep." The simple gesture of care brought fresh tears to eyes. "Thank you," she whispered, accepting the cup gratefully. "For everything today, I don't know how we would have managed without you." Mrs. Henderson smiled sadly and patted shoulder before quietly leaving her alone with her thoughts and the long night ahead. 6 months had passed since that tearful morning in the courtyard, and the palace had slowly adapted to William's absence like a garden learning to grow around a missing tree. The daily phone calls had become sacred rituals, scheduled around time zones and diplomatic meetings, each conversation a lifeline connecting the scattered pieces of their family across continents. Had discovered strengths she never knew she possessed. The woman who had once felt fragile as china on that first morning had evolved into something more resilient, like steel wrapped in silk. She handled royal duties that had previously been shared between her and William, attended state functions alone, and managed 3 growing children with a grace that impressed even the most seasoned palace staff. The children had grown too, in ways that went beyond their physical height. George had indeed become more responsible, but not in the burdensome way he had feared. Instead, he found joy in helping his younger siblings and pride in making his absent father proud. Charlotte had started a daily ritual of drawing pictures to send to William, creating a visual diary of their life that brought comfort to them all. Little Louis had learned to blow kisses at the phone during their evening calls, somehow understanding that this gesture could travel all the way to Papa. The breakthrough came on a Tuesday evening in late autumn. The family was gathered in the sitting room for their scheduled call when William's voice came through with unusual excitement. "I have some news," he said, and felt her heart stop for a moment, uncertain whether his tone promised good news or bad. "The diplomatic mission has been more successful than anyone expected," William continued, his words tumbling over each other in his eagerness to share. "The agreements we've reached have exceeded all hopes, and the Commonwealth leaders have agreed to conclude the talks early. I'm coming home." The silence that followed was profound, as if the entire palace was holding its breath. Then Charlotte's voice cut through the quiet like a silver bell. "Really, Papa? Really, truly?" Her question carried the weight of 6 months of careful hope, of bedtime stories told over crackling phone lines, of birthday celebrations with an empty chair at the table. "Really, truly, my darling? I'll be home in 1 week." William's voice broke with emotion as he spoke, and could picture him on the other end of the line, probably sitting in some official residence thousands of miles away, crying with the same joy that was now flooding through all of them. The week that followed was a whirlwind of preparation that felt completely different from the somber arrangements of William's departure. This time, the palace hummed with excitement rather than grief. The children threw themselves into creating welcome home decorations with an enthusiasm that infected even the most formal staff members. Head gardener Thomas spent hours arranging William's favorite flowers in the courtyard, while Mrs. Henderson supervised the preparation of a homecoming feast that included every dish William had mentioned missing during their phone calls. Found herself standing by the same window where this journey had begun, but this time her hands were steady and her heart was full of anticipation rather than dread. The letter on the table beside her was different too, not an official summons calling William away, but a detailed itinerary of his return journey, each line bringing him closer to home. The children could barely contain their excitement as the day arrived. They had practiced their welcome home speeches, planned the order in which they would hug him, and changed their clothes 3 times before breakfast. Even little Louis, now 4.5, seemed to understand that something magical was about to happen. The same black car that had carried William away pulled into the courtyard at exactly 3 o'clock in the afternoon, but this time its arrival was greeted with cheers instead of tears. The children broke free from gentle restraint and ran toward the vehicle before it had even stopped moving, their voices raised in joyous shouts of "Papa! Papa!" William emerged from the car like a man stepping back into his own life after a long dream. He looked thinner, more weathered by his months of diplomatic service, but his face lit up with a joy so brilliant it seemed to illuminate the entire courtyard. He dropped to his knees just as he had 6 months earlier, but this time his arms opened to embrace reunion instead of goodbye. The collision of children against their father was beautiful chaos. Louis threw himself into William's arms with the complete abandon of a child who had never doubted this moment would come. Charlotte presented him with a crown made of construction paper and glitter, proclaiming him the best papa in the whole world and all the countries too. George, trying to maintain some dignity as the eldest, still couldn't stop himself from wrapping his arms around his father's neck and whispering, "I missed you so much, Papa. So much." Approached more slowly, savoring the sight of her reunited family, hardly daring to believe that their long separation was finally over. William looked up at her over the children's heads, and their eyes met with the same intensity as on that first morning, but now filled with completion rather than loss. "Welcome home," she said simply, and those two words contained everything: forgiveness for the necessary departure, pride in his service, and joy beyond measure at his return. William stood, still holding Louis, and reached for her with his free arm. Their embrace was witnessed by the same staff who had said goodbye 6 months earlier, and many of the same tears were shed. But these were tears of joy, of relief, of a family made whole again. The palace photographer, David, captured the moment with the same discretion he had shown during the farewell, understanding that he was documenting the completion of a circle, the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. That evening, as the family gathered around the dinner table, complete for the first time in half a year, William looked at each face in turn, memorizing them all over again. "I learned something while I was away," he said quietly. "I learned that duty is important, that serving our country and the Commonwealth is a privilege and a responsibility. But I also learned that home isn't just a place you come back to. Home is the people who wait for you, who love you no matter how far you travel or how long you're gone." The children listened with the seriousness that important moments deserved, understanding that their father was sharing something profound. Reached across the table to take his hand, feeling the calluses that hadn't been there before, evidence of his hard work and dedication during their time apart. "I'm proud of you," she said, speaking not just as his wife, but as someone who had watched him carry out an impossible duty with grace and commitment. "We're all proud of you, but we're so very happy you're home." As bedtime approached, the family reluctantly began to separate, but with the comfortable knowledge that tomorrow they would all wake up under the same roof. William tucked each child into bed personally, reading stories and singing lullabies that phone calls had made impossible. When he finally joined in their own room, they sat together in comfortable silence, both almost afraid to speak in case this perfect day turned out to be a dream. "The mission was successful," William said finally. "The agreements we reached will help strengthen relationships across the Commonwealth for generations. But sitting here with you, with our children safe and happy in their beds, this feels like the real success. This feels like coming home." Outside their window, the palace settled into its nighttime rhythm, but tonight there was a different quality to the quiet. Tonight, the family was complete again, and the palace walls seemed to sigh with contentment, holding them all safe until morning came.